Have you ever wondered if there is something lurking inside your brain that can control your thoughts and actions? Sounds like a sci-fi horror movie, right? Well, it might be closer to reality than you think. It turns out that there are some real-life examples of such creepy creatures in nature. In this video, we will show you some of the most fascinating and terrifying cases of mind-controlling parasites that can infect humans and other animals and cause strange behaviors. You'll be amazed by how much these tiny organisms can do. So, without further ado, let's get started. Number 1. Toxoplasma gondii. Toxoplasma gondii is a single-celled organism that can infect almost any animal, but it can only reproduce sexually in cats. That means it needs to get from one cat to another to complete its life cycle. So, how does it do that? Well, it does that by manipulating the brains of its intermediate hosts, such as rats, birds, and even humans. Many studies have shown that infected rats lose their fear of cats and even become attracted to their smell. This makes them easy prey for the parasite's preferred host. This way, the parasite can hitch a ride inside the cat's stomach and start a new generation. But what about humans? Can toxoplasma change our behavior too? Well, some researchers think so. They have found that people with toxoplasma infection are more likely to have mental disorders, such as schizophrenia, depression, or autism. They are even more likely to have car accidents than uninfected people. Researchers also found that infected people tend to have different personality traits, such as being more outgoing, adventurous, and risk-taking. But how does toxoplasma do this? Well, one possibility is that it alters the levels of certain neurotransmitters in the brain, such as dopamine and serotonin, which are involved in mood, motivation, and decision-making. Another possibility is that it triggers an immune response that causes inflammation in the brain, which can affect cognitive function and mental health. However, these associations are not consistent across different populations and may be influenced by other factors, such as genetics, environment, or culture. In fact, most people who are infected with Toxoplasma gondii do not have any symptoms at all. They may never know that they carry the parasite in their brains. The parasite usually stays dormant in the brain and does not cause any harm unless the immune system is weakened by another disease or medication. In that case, it can reactivate and cause serious problems, such as seizures, blindness, or brain damage. You might be surprised to know that researchers estimate that about 30% of people on Earth have Toxoplasma gondii right now in their brains. So how can you get infected with this parasite? One of the most common sources of infection is eating undercooked meat that contains the parasite cysts. Another way is by coming into contact with cat feces that contain the parasite's eggs. This can happen if you have a pet cat that uses a litter box, or if you touch soil or water that is contaminated with cat poop. So, to avoid getting infected, always try to cook your meat thoroughly to kill any parasites. Also, keep your cat indoors and feed it only dry or canned food. And finally, clean your cat's litter box daily and wear gloves while doing so. Before we continue, if you have been enjoying the video so far, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss more videos like this. Number 2. Naegleria fowleri. Naegleria fowleri is also known as the brain-eating amoeba because it can literally eat your brain and cause a deadly infection called primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, or PAM for short. Naegleria fowleri lives in warm and shallow bodies of fresh water, such as lakes, rivers, and hot springs. It can also live in soil. It's a free-living organism, which means it doesn't need a host to survive. It usually feeds on bacteria and other microbes in the water. But sometimes, when the water is very warm and the amoeba is very hungry, it can switch to a different mode. It can become more aggressive and start looking for bigger prey. That's when it can pose a threat to humans. The only way Naegleria fowleri can infect you is if it goes up your nose. This can happen when you're swimming, diving, or doing something like water skiing in infected water. The amoeba then travels through your nasal cavity to your brain. There, it starts eating your brain cells and causing inflammation and damage. But how exactly does the amoeba eat your brain? And what does it do to your nervous system? Well, here are some scary facts. The amoeba has a mouth-like structure called an oral groove that it uses to suck up your brain cells. It also releases enzymes that break down your brain tissue and make it easier to digest. As a result of this, it causes extensive bleeding and swelling in your brain, which puts pressure on your skull and damages your nerves. Other than that, also triggers an immune response that causes more inflammation and tissue damage. It also can reach different parts of your brain, such as the cerebrum, cerebellum, and brainstem, and affect their functions. The symptoms of PAM are very severe and come on suddenly. They include headache, fever, vomiting, and stiff neck. The patient also usually has confusion, seizures, and coma. The infection usually progresses very quickly and leads to death within a week. Is there any treatment for PAM? Unfortunately, there is no specific cure for this infection. The only way to fight it is with a combination of drugs that can kill the amoeba and reduce the inflammation in the brain. But these drugs are not very effective and have many side effects. Even with treatment, most people who get PAM die. So how can you protect yourself from this terrifying amoeba? The best way is to avoid getting infected water up your nose. So don't swim or dive in stagnant, warm, and shallow fresh water, especially during hot weather or after heavy rain. Number 3. Trypanosoma. Trypanosoma is a tiny organism that lives in the blood of some animals and humans. It can be transmitted by the bite of a tsetse fly, which is a kind of insect that lives in sub-Saharan Africa. The tsetse fly picks up the parasite from an infected animal or human and then passes it on to another one when it bites them. That's how the disease spreads. Trypanosoma has two forms, one that causes a chronic infection and one that causes an acute infection. The chronic form accounts for 92% of reported cases. The acute form accounts for 8% of reported cases. The chronic form can stay in your body for months or even years without causing any major symptoms. You might feel tired, have a fever, or lose weight, but nothing too serious. However, eventually the parasite reaches your brain and starts to mess with your nervous system. That's when things get bad. It turns out that the parasite interferes with your circadian rhythm, which is the natural cycle of sleeping and waking that your body follows. The parasite releases chemicals that disrupt the production of melatonin, which is a hormone that regulates your sleep. This makes you feel sleepy during the day and awake at night. It also affects your sleep quality, making it harder for you to fall asleep and stay asleep. This is why the disease is also known as sleeping sickness. The sleep-wake cycle becomes reversed, and you lose control over your sleep patterns. You might also experience personality changes, confusion, mood swings, and hallucinations. These are signs that the parasite has damaged your brain. Sleeping sickness is a serious disease that affects millions of people in Africa and can be fatal if left untreated. The best way to prevent sleeping sickness is to avoid getting bitten by tsetse flies. You can do this by wearing long-sleeved shirts and pants, using insect repellent, and sleeping under a mosquito net. So, these are just some of the examples of parasites that can control human brain or other animals' brains. There are many more out there, waiting to be discovered by curious scientists and horror fans alike. What do you think about these mind-bending creatures? Do you find them fascinating or frightening? Do you think they could pose a threat to human health or society? Share with us your experiences and opinions in the comments below. We love to hear them. Thanks for watching.